Ch Herbert's 100 Harem. Wow, Amity 1 and 2 say at the same time as they arrive at the synthetic Ascension Temple. This one has numerous statues posing around that have transparent components to show off different points of the internal workings of machines. All of it a show-off of just how complicated, refined, and advanced the ascended states of its practitioners are. The statues have logic trees incorporated into them. If you ask them questions about the parts they're showing off, they'll tell you about them. Lady Gear states, and the children rush off in all directions to start interrogating the statues about all their shown-off components. A few of them even flex and reorient to show off that they simply have transparent components rather than being statues and are in fact fully articulated, but primitive robots. Well, primitive AI, the bodies are very advanced. So are your girls already working on her new body? Herbert asks. Yes, the biggest issue is that the brute Archana is much more robust than most Archana species. Thankfully, many of our bodies for people who seek ascension without the skill to make their own bodies have interchangeable parts. We're just reinforcing some parts as we put together a copy of Miss Amity's body. Good. Thank you so much for doing this. These are good kids, but physically incapable of considering the ramifications of their actions? Chitter asks in amusement. Yes, the axiom makes up for it for me and others who have been rejuvenated. But first time through being a child and your brain just isn't developed enough. So you need a balance between letting them find their gifts and passions and keeping them from hurting themselves or going to places where others will hurt them, Herbert says. You're a father. Lady Gear realizes. Pardon? We haven't been introduced, Herbert says, turning to her and holding out his hand. I am Agent Herbert Jameson of the Undaunted Intelligence Division. I believe I've made the news on a few occasions. The young human with over 100 sons. The first test of a specialized Y chromosome permitting spermicide was very successful, working with human spermatozoa to an exceptional degree. Trials are currently ongoing for other species so that families can better their odds of having a son. We've already got a couple. Really? Lady Gear asks. Really, Herbert replies. Still, that's neither here nor there. Now that you know about these crazy kids, what's going to happen? Beyond making sure that Amity II is safe and secure, we'll keep an eye on them. That level of talent is exceptional. We've only found its rival when specially modified and trained clones were involved. Herbert notes, and to be honest, I don't want those two groups to interact. Entire spires will be coated with glitter if it ever happens. Are you allowed to tell me what happened? Lady Gear asks. Only if you sign an NDA, Herbert replies. So are we going to go with the plan of distracting Amity II over and over with body jumping, or, well, things seem to have resolved themselves fairly well. We're taking this blessing as it comes. We have the lower chassis for the girl ready, but the individual legs still need some reinforcement, and it needs to be integrated into the torso, which is a modified child rabbi's torso, which needs further reinforcement itself, Lady Gear says. Right, and it's the reinforcement that a brute Archana needs to move normally that's slowing things, isn't it? Herbert asks. Very much so. They're a powerful people, and it's working against her now. Lady Gear notes. Well, I think I've got some films that might distract them for a bit if you need more time. How much is this going to cost? Cost? I don't expect you to make an emergency body and shelter a young woman without compensation. How much are we looking at? I'm not asking for things down to the tritite, just a general estimate. Herbert says, looking right towards Lady Gear, who smiles. While we welcome all donations, we perform such things for free. While it's not common and in fact somewhat rare, little Amity II is not the first synthetic without a proper body we've had to deal with, although normally it's due to someone trying to create a synthetic sibling or child without having a proper body for them. Technically, this is what's happened here. Most of them are at the stage where boys are more than just girls that like weird things and aren't around all that much. Lady Gear returns and Herbert huffs in amusement. Yeah, these little prodigies are going to... Uh-oh, excuse me, Herbert says before he sees Amity II reaching for one of the displays and is already most of the way to her as she picks it up and begins turning it around. It's not moving at all, mostly because it likely has no programming for what to do. when a spider tank picks it up to get a closer look at it. "Careful, little lady. You don't want to break the nice things, do you?" "But I want to get a closer look," Amity 2 states. "I understand that, but don't you have a zoom feature on your new cameras?" Herbert asks, and the spider tank tilts a little in thought. Her grip slackens and Herbert scrambles to catch the art piece before it can slam into anything and sets it down nice and peacefully on its stand. This it does know how to respond to, and it takes up a muscle man pose. Not quite the right response to the situation, but good enough. "Blah! It's so weird!" Amity 2 suddenly exclaims, and he looks down to see that her camera lens eyes are sticking nearly half a foot out of their mountings in a zoom feature taken way too hard. "Why does everything look so weird like that?" She looks up at him. "Your skin is full of holes." "Those are called sweat glands. They keep me cool," he replies. "How?" "They pour out an oil that evaporates fast and carries away the heat." "Is it a machine oil, like I use now?" "No." "Oh, is it for cooking?" "No." "What kind of oil is it?" "Biological?" "Oh, is that why you're so smelly?" "Hey, I'm not smelly," Herbert protests, and her eyes retract back into place and then sweep over him with a blue scanning beam. "Since when could you do that?" "Sensors indicate fumes rising up from target Herbie. Conclusion, he smells. Herbie smells. Herbie smells. Ha ha. Yeesh," Herbert mutters to himself as the kids take up the chant, and the declaration that he smells bounces off the walls and ceiling. This prompts some laughter from Lady Gear and Chitter. The entrance to the temple in Amity 2 exploring her new scanners, camera modes, and zoom settings to look at things again occupies so much time that the new body is properly put together. Then comes the bit where a line is set up between the spider tank and the spider bot body, while all the children are staring in awe with their faces pressed up against the glass of the observation theater. Then a tiny synthetic brute arcana powers up, and a series of outlining markings start glowing a blue to match the tank's paint to give her own special look. Herbert lets in Amity, who skitters up to her sister, and as Amity 2 sees her, she matches her sister's charge, and the two ram into each other and start circling as they're both too excited to stop moving as they hug each other and start asking each other absolutely everything and trying to answer at the same time. It sounds like almost complete gibberish, as neither is bothering to enunciate properly or waiting to speak. Herbert chuckles even as he watches the rest of the children pile in to start asking Amity 2 everything they can. He lets out a relieved sigh and smiles at the sight as Chitter walks up to him and smiles herself. "I think we'll all breathe a little easier with that little lady not being able to casually crush people." "She still can with Axiom. It's the accidental that I was worried about. These kids are a danger to themselves at times, extremely capable, and don't think things through. But they're good kids. If we put it up to whether or not they're being careful, then someone's going to get hurt. But if it's up to whether or not they want something to be hurt, then things will be just fine," Herbert explains as Amity 2 starts rushing around so everyone can get a good look at the new her, and she then tests out how mobile she is. "Thank goodness we put in the automatic kinetic dampeners into those feet," Chitter says as Amity 2 suddenly rushes to a nearby wall and goes straight up it, followed by Amity the First, who has Naka hanging onto her back and cheering. There is a moment of excitement as Naka loses her grip, but she falls a total of 3 feet to land into the smooth hands of Lady Gear. "Now, children, calm yourselves a little. There are many delicate things in this room. If you want to play, we best head somewhere else," a new voice says, and Herbert turns to regard a sister of the Gravid faith, a felly woman, looking tired but proud. "Sister West? Good to see you again," Herbert says. "Hello again, Herbert. I see from your squeaky voice and smaller stature that you've gotten into trouble," she notes, clearly not happy with that, but saying nothing more. "I go in so others don't have to," he answers by rote. It's more a greeting with this woman. "But why you?" she asks. "Then who?" he replies, unchanged still. "I don't even want to think about the kind of harm you have to suffer to de-age yourself just to survive it. The kind of harm that I will do many things to stop others from ever enduring," Herbert answers. "Besides, it also gets me scenes like this." "I see, speaking of," Sister West says as she walks by him and the children spot her at last. They gather around her and start explaining everything that's going on. all at once and no one coherent story to it. So do you have a plan for the tank? Is there a direction to that question? Chitter asks. It tells me whether or not I'm giving up the weapon primers or not, Herbert says, holding up a hand full of the little parts of the weapons he's torn out of the tank without anyone noticing. When did you do all that? During the little party I threw for Amazi 2's birthday. Perfect distraction, he answers. Oh, you are one to keep an eye on, aren't you? Chitter asks, and he shrugs before pocketing the devices. You've introduced yourself as agent. You're clearly an adult, de-aged back to childhood, and you clearly have a lot of pull with the undaunted. Also, I have looked up some details. 100 sons? Really? Yes, really, he says. Out in the field to get some time away? No, earning my paycheck in a safer way than usual, getting some practice in case any of my children end up like these kids, he says. Honestly, it can wear at me, but balanced with field work and it doesn't get tiring. How did you find names for them all? That wasn't easy. We settled on having about 4 names from each letter of the English alphabet. Aaron, Arnold, Adrian, Argon, Brian, Bruce, Bernard, Babar, Colin, Christopher, Carlos, Clark. It keeps going, but has made it easy for me to remember them all. So do you think that she'll get? Chitter begins to ask, even as Amazi 2 rushes up to her previous body and starts trying to manually access a side weapon. You got that one right? This is what I yanked out of it, Herbert says, holding up the mechanism between 2 fingers. She looks it over and nods. Good. Without that, it won't fire. That's right, Herbert says, pocketing the device again. How often do these kids get together? Every couple of days. Same place you tracked me to. Next meeting is going to be decided at the end of this. I'm in. I'm not letting this level of talent run around and risk blowing itself up. Good. I normally got them covered, but sometimes I need serious help, Herbert remarks before looking at the tank. Like today, I thought these kids were bad using bedsheet gliders with jet engines. Thank God I got on this one in time. What god do you worship? Benevolent creator god. There's been a lot of upheaval lately, though, so I haven't had time to sit down and consider my tenets of faith and such. World's been too hectic for that kind of deep thought, he notes. And what's your consideration of it? I think that I like the idea, but I haven't had much time to think of more. So not following self-ascendance, higher purpose, or the primals, Chitter asks him. I think that there is a purpose, perhaps a higher one, but I don't know it. So I do what I consider to be wise and good. If I'm wrong, then that's that. If I'm right, then that is that. I have too much to do in the here and now to concern myself with the forever after. That's sad, Chitter says, and he shrugs. That's life. You don't always get the time to do what you need to. But we have all the time in existence. So do you. Yes, but I don't right now. Right now, I have no time. He answers, and she blinks and considers him again.